about this love, about this, about this love, about this love. How you guys doing today? You are tuning into About This Love podcast with myself, Dale, and my wife, Charel. Say what's up to the peoples.
What's up, peoples?
How you guys doing today? Definitely hope you guys enjoyed the episode on last week and the week before that. As always, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. I think that's the only places that you can follow us. And you can find our podcast anywhere where podcasts can be found. We were recently added to Amazon Podcast and Pandora Podcast.
It's Amazon Music.
Oh, well, Amazon Music, Amazon Podcast. It's all the same. It's the same location. If you guys listen to those platforms, definitely look us up and follow us. Thank you guys. And before we begin, we just wanted to read a scripture that was going to lead us into our segue for today.
So this is 1 Corinthians 11, 2 through 3.
1 through 3.
Oh, 1 through 3?
Yeah.
Please turn to 1 Corinthians 11, 1 through 3. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. I praise you for remembering me in everything and for holding to the traditions just as I pass them on to you.
I wanted to do a continuation of the episode that we did 2 weeks ago. So kind of like this is basically part 2. But as I was like out and about thinking about the episode, the Lord actually reminded me that a part of God's kingdom, with the culture of God's kingdom, a lot of that is brought to us from God through other people. And I was thinking about Paul and his relationship with Timothy. Oftentimes in the scriptures, Paul called Timothy his son. You know, now we know that Timothy wasn't his biological son because Paul didn't have any children biologically. In the scriptures, it also mentions Paul's father and mother. I think Timothy was Greek. I want to say he was Greek, and his father was an unbeliever, and he actually became a believer because I think his mother or grandmother was a believer. So we actually know that Timothy his natural father wasn't a believer. So throughout the scriptures in Corinthians and even as I read Timothy, Paul, he just tells Timothy, continue to follow the instructions or the statutes or the traditions that I've laid before you. So, Dale, what are you saying all of this? In part 2 of the segue that we did 2 weeks ago, one of the things that I wanted to highlight was a lot of the culture that God gives to us, which the culture of his kingdom, is brought to us through other people, being in our lives, influencing us, and us kind of becoming sons of theirs spiritually. So a lot of that culture is us watching them, in the first podcast, I mentioned how I didn't grow up in an environment where that was very conducive to raising children, and I didn't really see many good examples of godly fathers and husbands. Now I've seen a lot of good fathers and husbands in my natural family, but I didn't really see very many godly husbands and fathers. So a lot of that came throughout my life as I was in my early 20s. I spent the majority of my time around a bunch of mature believers and mature guys in the faith, as I would just be around them and their families and watch how they interacted with their families. A lot of that is how I learned to actually be a good father and a good husband. Just being around them, seeing how they responded when situations came up or when their wives brought things to them, that were kind of troublesome. I just watched how they would handle it very gracefully, very patiently, and just kind of seeing that and being around that, and it allowed me to realize that this is actually a part of the culture of God's kingdom. Because one of the things that Paul says to the husbands is, to dwell with your wives in understanding. And I think oftentimes many of us we kind of forget that God doesn't tell Paul to tell the church to tell the wives to dwell with your husbands in understanding. He says he tells the husbands that. But to the women, he says, love your husband. So I think that just being around godly people is one way that we become exposed to the culture of God's kingdom. And that culture, actually, it begins to infect us and begins to become a part of every aspect, of our lives. And it's just, it's really a blessing. I was thinking about that because we and my wife, we had went to celebrate a good friend of ours' 40th birthday. And her and her husband has been very pivotal to our walk, first with the Lord, and then second in our marriage. It's probably honorable to say that if it hadn't been for them, we probably wouldn't even be married no more. To keep it 100. So just to kind of show that their very presence has been pivotal to our life, first in the Lord, and then to me and my wife. I remember when I was like in my early 20s, because I know I've been knowing them for a little over 10 years now. I remember when I was in my early 20s, they would always invite me to come to their house and just like be a part of their family. And to be honest, like it was kind of weird to me because I had spent a majority of my life, down south, and I don't really remember going to anyone's house that I went to church with, unless it was like people that was in my family. You know, of course, you know, that's just natural. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there was a few people that I did go to their house, but for me, it was different because I found myself always being at their house. I'm talking about like for like their like natural families, like birthdays when they would have it at their house, I would be there, and for Christmas I was there. And as I began to really think about it over the years, I was like, wow, you know, I was actually engrafted into their family. You know, because I know all their natural family, mothers, brothers, stepdads, and you know, so it just reminded me how I was able to get a glimpse into the culture of the Lord's kingdom through them. And I had her read the scripture from Paul, because I think it's very pivotal that we understand that sometimes we come into a marriage or come into this life of Christendom, as I can say, and we don't really know what to do. Like we read the Bible and we try to translate that into our natural lives. It's like I can't read something and become that. And I feel like God understood that. He knew that. You know, even in the Old Testament, you had men who would disciple younger men. You know, what was it? Was Abraham had Joshua? You know, Elijah, the prophet Elijah, had Elisha. So I feel like all throughout scriptures, this model of having someone follow your life as you follow the Lord, it's kind of been the fundamental principle throughout the scriptures. You know, so I feel like for people who are young in the faith, young in the Lord, and young in marriage, I can try to, if I want to, read the scriptures and try to live out what I see in the scriptures. But the reality of it is I'll probably begin to do a little of it. I'll probably begin to be a little off.
What it sounds like you're talking about is enculturation. So the definition of enculturation is the gradual acquisition of the characteristics and norms of a culture or group by a person, another culture, etc. And so I actually wrote an article about how it was basically just about how men and women like come into manhood or come into their womanhood, but how they learn the culture of their family. And it's not something that, you know, you just get, you know, it's not something that you just can, I don't know, like get by osmosis, right? But really by you being amongst like a certain group of people and you basically, you know, you do the things that they do. You talk to the elders. You are a part of their, you know, ceremonies and traditions. And I mean, that's what it sounds like you were saying that you were saying just about our friends, that's what they have done. And I mean, they've done that for me as well, because it's like we can read the scriptures, but then trying to interpret that, it'll be all spiritual. And, you know, we'll begin something in the spirit and end up trying to carry it out in the flesh. And you wondering why somebody got 2 and 3 wives because they misinterpreted, you know, trying to do something. I mean, I think about Sarah and Abraham, how they had unbelief, like, even though the Lord had promised Abraham just a holy generation, you know, just from him, from his loins, right? Being realistic, Sarah realistically couldn't see like how that's supposed to be carried out. And I think oftentimes we forget that being the first of our generation, meaning Dale and I are pretty much the first to be married, not of our parents, but the first to be married and walking with the Lord, you know, within our marriage, right? And so we are the first ones. There's no one in our family who has shown us what that's supposed to look like, how that's supposed to sound like, what we're supposed, like how we are supposed to communicate and how we're supposed to do things.
Yeah.
And so since we are the first ones, like Abraham, it's like the unknown. It's really like the unknown, and it's almost like we can go out there, you know, with so much hope and so much assurance in the Lord and the word of the Lord. And okay, the Lord said this, and so I'm going to just do this. And then you get there and it's the wilderness, even though you know that the Lord, you know, promised you this land and promised you children and, you know, a whole nation. And it's like, well, all I see is dirt. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, I'm out here and it's dirt.
I remember early on in my marriage and early on in my walk with the Lord, I would always be like, I'm gonna just believe God, you know, I'm gonna just go over here, I'm gonna trust the Lord. And I know my you know, like I said, the couple that kind of mentored me, her husband, he's a father figure to me. Well, yeah, he's a father figure to me, but he would always be like, he's very practical. He'd be like, okay, so you're gonna go over here and you're gonna believe God, and then what? Like, basically what he was saying to me is that, like, even in me believing God, there has to be some practicality to what I'm doing. Like, I can't say I'm going to move to Alabama or move to Atlanta, Georgia or Florida. I'm going to believe God. He going to provide for me a house, an apartment, stay, and a job. It's like, yeah, brother, you probably want to apply for some jobs first and call a couple of apartments, in that area. Just kind of get the ball moving to give God something to work with. I can't just, like, can I just believe God? Yes, I can just believe God. Can God move in my ignorance of me just not being practical? Of course he can. He's God. But should I test the Lord in that matter? Probably not. So I just think that throughout the course of my life and my marriage, it's good having people in your life who can actually test the things that you say and do. And there's actually a scripture. I want to say it's in the Epistle of John, where it says, "Test the spirit by the Spirit to see if it's from God or the devil." Even in our own personal lives, again, that's a part of the culture of God's kingdom. When I say something or I say that God told me this, am I around a council of believers who can challenge and test what I'm saying to see if it was from the Lord or if I just pulled it out of my behind? There was a dispute that came up in the earlier church between Paul and Peter and some of the apostles about should the Gentile believers have to get circumcised. And for a lot of you guys that don't know, circumcision was a Jewish custom. It was a Jewish tradition. It was a part of their natural culture. And again, they were trying to bring something that was a part of their natural culture into the Gentiles. Now, when the scripture speaks about Gentiles, it's basically speaking about people who are not of Jewish descent. They didn't get the law of Moses or the Torah, as some people call it, the Torah. They didn't get that. They didn't live by that. They were godless. So when Paul came on the scene, the believers were trying to get people who were not of Jewish descent to do Jewish things, Jewish natural customs. And it was becoming a stumbling block for those Gentile believers. So, of course, they had a little, hiccup. So they basically told Paul, go back to the apostles, in Jerusalem, and you ask them. You get the word from them, because it became a stumbling block. And then, they were like, the long story short, they was like, you know what? Nah, they don't have to get circumcised. Why put our natural traditions and our natural bylaws on them when they're walking this thing out spiritually? Now, we're going to still do what we do because it's a part of our culture, part of our heritage, but that shouldn't have to be made to be put off on them. So it's just a way that throughout scripture, when I say, oh, God told me this, or God showed me, or I believe God is asking me to do this. Well, are there other people in your corner who can challenge that?
Who you actually walk with?
Yeah, walk with who can challenge that. I'm not saying challenge it in a negative way, but throughout my life, there are many things that, like I said, the young lady and her husband, who's a father figure to me, have challenged me on. And if they didn't, God knows, I'd have been out here in the middle of nowhere doing, I don't know, God knows what. So I'm actually glad that they did challenge me on that stuff, because a lot of it wasn't from the Lord. I mean, and a lot of it had a lot of good intentions, but it wasn't God,
Well, can I read this, Dale?
Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I cut you off. Okay, so it's 1 John 4:1, and this is the King James Version. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. So that's the scripture that you're referring to.
Yeah, because oftentimes, like I said before, when we're young in our marriage, young in the Lord, and we're still becoming accustomed to the culture of God's kingdom, we tend to do what we think is right and do is best. And I believe that, I know that in most of the cases, God honors that because he knows that it's coming from a genuine and pure place. It's not coming from a place of malice. It's coming from a heart that wants to serve God the Father. So he honors that. But as we mature, there has to be people, godly people who we walk with in the faith, who can challenge the things that we say we believe in, the things that we say we do. Like just just anything that you say and believe, or you say that you believe, there should be someone in your life who can challenge that, or who can speak to that, and to see if it's from God or to see if it's from the enemy. Like, where are you getting that information from?
You know what I thought of? 2 examples. So remember when Jesus was tempted by the enemy when he went into fasting and praying?
Yeah.
And it's almost like we never think about that scenario. Like, even Jesus was confronted by the enemy while he was fasting and praying. So imagine, like, if you've ever fasted and prayed, like, you're weak, you're tired,
Vulnerable.
vulnerable. I mean, I remember when a few years ago when I was fasting and praying, like, you get up super early, depending on, what type of fast you're choosing to do. I had fasted from food, and I think I only did water, but, you're working through that. You're not just sitting at home. You know what I'm saying?
No bull.
That would probably be the easiest fast if you could just sit at home. I mean, I don't know, but I was physically working, so having to keep myself physically, like,
active and busy.
active on kind of no food, or I got up before sunrise and I tried to eat, and I noticed, like, I started eating smaller and smaller meals, but because it was just like, no, when I try to eat a big meal, like, it becomes too much. And so either way, if you've ever fasted, that you become weak, you offer no food, and it's kind of like lunchtime roll around, everybody got their plates out, and it's like, yeah, I got my Bible out right here. I'm going to feed on the word of the Lord. Like, yeah. I mean, and it's such a great time. Like, man, when I say it was such a great time just to hear from the Lord on some things. However, going back to Jesus, in the wilderness, fasting and praying, and, when the enemy came and tempted him, he tempted him with scripture. And it's like, people in the world, they can do that. Surprisingly, like, we forget that our enemies know scripture. Our enemy knows scripture. And they know how to twist it and turn it. And the second that doubt comes in, it's kind of like, well, I mean, it do say that Jesus would have been eating on some rocks, Like, so who's to say that you're not going to be sitting there, somebody throw some scripture at you and it sounds good, right? But because, the Lord, the character and nature of the Lord, and his intentions for you, for when you go out, you set out to do something, it's almost like you're not sitting over there looking foolish, like imagining that these rocks are bread and it's really rocks. It's still rocks,
Yeah, it's interesting because I was thinking about before we got married, my father, but I remember when me and my wife got married, one of the things that he told him and his wife were telling me and my wife was that when they got married, they had I think like 9 months later they had their first child. So he was like, man, y'all might just want to just really just wait, if you see to. He's like, if you want to, you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you feel, whatever you feel like to do. I say, I say it's funny you say that. It's because we did tell ourselves that we wanted to wait 2 years before we had our kid.
Yep.
2 years, and I'm glad we did because like we were able to travel a lot. We traveled a lot our first few years. We traveled a lot. We did Florida. We went to.
Wait, that's the only reason why you wanted to wait on kids?
No, well, yes, because when you have children, you're not as
available
to do things as you are when you have some smaller children. Like our oldest son, he's 7 years old now, so he was fairly young, but he's old enough where we can just go and put some clothes in the bag and go. Well, when you got a 7-month-old baby, you gotta get the milk prepared. You gotta put that, make sure it's cold. Get a couple pair of clothes, get diapers, wipes. It's like it's not as easy to just move about. And when you have a child that can walk, you can kind of just hold his hand out and move real fast. But when you got a baby, you gotta have a stroller, have a car seat, it's a lot of things you need, so you can't just move as easy. So I'm actually glad that we did. And I'm saying all that to say that like it was for us, it was just very practical that we did that. That somebody could say, hey, man, you may just want to wait for a while, to have your second child because A, B, C, and D. And to me, I'm thankful to God that we did wait because we were able to do a lot. We traveled a lot.
It's not, Dale. For me, I don't feel like we traveled a lot, but I guess
we traveled a lot.
In comparison to how much you used to travel, I guess that is traveling a lot.
We traveled a lot.
Okay.
In comparison to how I used to travel. I used to travel a lot.
Man. But you know what? That's what Dale's saying about travel, but that's not initially what we said as to why we wanted to wait.
It was a financial reason, right?
No, it wasn't financial.
No, I thought we wanted to financially.
It wasn't only finances. I'll say that. It wasn't only finances. It was, we wanted to get out of debt. And also, too.
Yeah. So it was financial then.
No,
that's financial.
No, that's not only financial, though. Because we also wanted, we've heard and we were advised, the first couple of years of marriage is tough. And so then you go in, your first year of marriage, you go and have a baby. They advised us that kids naturally divide you. They naturally divide you because, they're different needs and wants. I mean, we're seeing that with our baby. It's kind of like some friends of ours asked us the other day, was like, oh, yeah, this is cute how you guys set up, this little corner of the house or the basement. You guys having cute cuddle nights or whatever. And I'm just thinking, You know what? No, we don't have cute cuddle nights. I mean, not without the
At least not
kids.
now. Yeah, at least not now.
Yeah, like not without the kids. No. So it's not all lovey-dovey, and we have to work even harder for those things. And so like without getting that counsel before we were married, it was almost like, not that it deterred us from having children, but we came to an agreement where it's like, we don't want to have children until we're married for 2 years. And I feel like the Lord honored that, because I feel like right after our second anniversary, we got pregnant.
I'm going to just say from a man's perspective, I wanted to be financially stable. I wanted to be, like I said, one, out of debt, and we did get rid of a lot of debts that we had. And also, I just wanted to put it this way: I came up in an environment and a natural family. Like even now, some of my natural family, they have children and they don't have the financial means to prepare for those children or provide for them, so it creates poverty. Go ahead and keep it 100. Having children takes money. My wife, she'd have been to a lot of appointments with our first baby. So having children, it's a financial responsibility that you have to have the finances to be able to take care of them. You know what I'm saying? So for me, having our first child, I wanted to be financially stable. Yes, I did. Me. Personally, I don't speak for my wife. Obviously, what she's saying. She wouldn't have got a debt, but I wanted to financially be set, and I wanted to also enjoy my wife. For all those men who understand what I'm saying, brothers. So that for me was what was the reason why I wanted to wait to have a child or children. After getting married.
Like right after getting married, within that first couple years. Yeah. I mean, I was telling someone just last night that it seems like it's wartime. As soon as you walk past the threshold of like being husband and wife, it's like you have to get to know one another as like, even if you've been with the person forever, even before getting married, it's a whole different territory once you're like husband and wife, because I feel like different doors open up and you're really getting to know this person. They're really stepping into the role, or at least they should be stepping into the role as husband, as wife, taking the authority over, one another. I just feel like your mindset just shifts, into a different territory of responsibility. Because, I mean, let's be honest, there's people who combine their lives together and they're like, and they've been doing it for years with, I don't know, this person, that person, or one person for about, 6-7 years. And it's almost like, I mean, we basically family now. If I'm honest, just this year, we've been married 3 going on to 4 years.
This 4 years, man. You talking about 3 going on 4?
Okay, fine.
Finna be going in 5 years.
Okay, fine.
Get it right.
Listen. Either way, this year of our marriage, I'm just now really starting to feel like Dale is my family.
That's her. I felt that way after the first few days that I met her. So she can go ahead and kill all that silliness.
Dale.
That's silliness.
Look, I'm glad it worked out that we got married. No, but I mean, I'm being honest. I just now am starting to feel like that. The reality of that is starting to set in, because it's like, man, we doing life together. Like, this is a real thing. And so I feel like with the level of responsibility that I have to you as your wife, to these kids, to the life that we're building together, like, I guess, you can kind of have that when you're dating somebody, but I feel like it's always well, if this don't work out, I can like run out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can just start my life over. So, I mean, people think that in their marriage as well, but I think that once you really get engrafted into your marriage and it starts to become a thing that you guys are doing together, because you realize you're doing life with this person.
Yeah, I did want to add, I think for me, the biggest part of the culture of God's kingdom that was really revealed to me, and my wife, you can add to this too, is that like a lot of the men and women who kind of raised us in the faith and even contributed a lot to our marriage, a lot of those dudes, man, when it came to their wives and children, they were very selfless. Like they gave themselves to their wives and to their children in ways that I had never seen before. I'm just going to be 100. As a natural man, I hadn't seen like one of our closest friends that they come to my house 3 times a week. Like, I remember when I first met them, like, if his wife had a job and she was real stressful, he's like, you know what, quit your job. I'm gonna get another job, make the income, quit your job. I don't want you stressed. And one of the parts, like one of the things that really like helped me out is being a part of that, is that like these men, they really guard the hearts of their wives. And to me, it was kind of like, this is like a fairy tale, but they really treasure the hearts of their wives. Like they love their wives, and they don't want them to be too stressed out. They don't want them to be, too mentally bombarded with things. And so that they do a lot to really make sure that their wives are not, now we know this is life, and sometimes it's not always possible, but that's one of the things that I took away, is that, like, in the scripture, when Paul says, husbands, dwell with your wives in understanding, it's imperative that you really, because as men, we're very prideful and we're very arrogant. Like, no, we're going to do this right here. That's what we're going to do, period. It's over. No more discussion. It's like, but you can actually turn the heart of your wife against you when you behave that way. You actually turn the heart of your wife against you, because now you're acting more as a dictator. And the culture of the kingdom is that, and if you don't remember nothing else from this podcast, remember this. The culture of God's kingdom is that, and that I'm always willing to lay down my life for those who are under my rule. In the culture of God's kingdom, Jesus and God, they don't rule with the iron fist. They rule for the benefit of those under their rule. So my wife and my children, everything that I do in my godly rule for them is for their benefit. Even if anything, is to my disadvantage. Not saying that it will be, because it won't be, because as a man, I can tell you, if your wife isn't stressed out and she's, at a place where she's always happy and mentally she's free, that opens up, more things for you guys and avenues for you guys. So you'll benefit from that. But the flip side of that is, it might be a lot of long days, but that you're tired. That's just the reality of it. So I think that for me, one of the biggest attributes of God's kingdom, that for those who are believers, that you have to obtain, it has to manifest in your life, is that you, as husbands and as men, that you rule for the benefit of those subject to your rule, and you lay down your life for them, even at the cost of yourself. That's selfless. So I just wanted to, I just wanted to add that. I feel like the Lord really put it on my heart to really just add that part to the podcast. Anything you want to share, babe, before we get out of here?
I would just agree with, not disagree. Sorry if it sounded like that. Nah, I'm a disagree with all that. I don't know what No, it's so funny you say that. I will agree with you on that, because from the wise perspective, it's just like you're absolutely correct. Like, I have seen the wives kind of be free to do or not do certain things because of their husbands laying down their lives. Now that, of course, relate to different sacrifices that have to be made. But on the wives' side of it, it's like there is always an agreement.
Yeah.
It isn't like, well, my husband just going, he just going to get it and do it. There's always an agreement. There's always a conversation. It's a tough conversation. I mean, we've seen that in our own marriage. It's a tough conversation, but it's a conversation. And the one thing I will say is that, as a wife, looking back on that sacrifice, I cannot say that you don't take care of me. Like, as a wife, looking back at the different things that we've had to go through, whether the Lord kind of forcefully kind of moved us out of that, or, it was our decisions, but it's just like, at the end of the day, we're taken care of. Yeah. And so, I think that the Lord honors, one, that agreement that, between husband and wife that you all have made. And then two, honors both husband and wife because of, the different compromises and also how they are laying their lives down.
Yeah.
In the same way that, as a wife, you look for your husband to lay his life down for you. You're laying your life down for your children and for your home. Yeah.
And I just think that, like I mentioned that because I know for a lot of us, our natural culture doesn't really demonstrate to us like doing that. Like, some cultures, like some of the things that I've seen growing up, it's like men are very dominant of their wives. Like, no, you're gonna do this, is what we're gonna do, period, in discussion. And it's like the wives just fall in line. But it's like they fall in line, but you can tell it's not like a falling in line like, okay, honey, I love you. No, it's like, it's very begrudgingly, and then they become very bitter. And it's like, I never want to put that kind of pressure on a person where it's like, this is how I am. I talk to my wife all the time. Like, hey, I know sometimes I'll be like, hey, I would be like, hey, I love you. And no, she would say, I love you. And I wouldn't say nothing back to her. And she would be like, well, you gonna say it back? I'm like, did you tell me you love me for me to say it back? Or did you tell me you love me because you actually love me? I don't want you to do anything. Like, if I tell you I love you, I don't want you to say it back because I told you I love you. I want you to say it back because you want to. And if you don't want to, if you don't feel like saying it that particular time, that's fine. I mean, it's cool.
I don't love
you know,
you
it's
at
cool.
that
It's not a big deal, but it's like everything that I do for my wife and our family, I want them to want to do it. I don't want them to do it because I said to do it. Now, it's different if it's like a situation of imminent danger or a situation that got to be taken care of now. That's different. Like, you know, get in the car now. We got to go. That's different. But just in our everyday lives, when I'm just talking to them, and I don't want my wife to do something because I said to do it. I'm the man of the house. Do it now. Or else. Like, I never want that to be a situation for me and my wife. But I want her to do it because she loves me, she trusts me, and she respects my judgment and my opinion. That's why I would want her to do it. So just remembering that the culture of God's kingdom is one where I lay down my life, and for that my rule over my family is for their benefit and not for my own benefit. So
I agree. Well, I've enjoyed today's conversation with you, Dale.
Most definitely. Thank you guys for rocking with us today. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Definitely engage with us more on Facebook and Instagram, you know, and definitely, as we stated before in the beginning of the podcast, you can adjust our podcast anywhere where podcasts can be adjusted. Until next time, peace.